And one thing you've brought that actually takes us to the next thing, budgeting.
So what is a budget? A budget is essentially telling your money where to go, giving it direction
And a purpose.
Welcome to Zamara Podcast, your gateway to financial literacy and well-being.
I'm your host, Crescencia Ododa. Today we'll be looking at an all too familiar topic, that is budgeting. And we're joined by our guest, Masiki Munge, a professional in the financial services sector with over 12 years of experience, spanning from the insurance sector and now in the retirement space. We are all brought up not knowing how to go about this. What are the simple ways anyone can start when it comes to budgeting?
You know, coincidentally, our parents taught us how to budget, but they taught us funnily. Because every time you'd say, Mom or Dad, get me something, what would they say? There's no money.
Oh.
That's what they'd say all the time.
That's not the budgeting aspect that they had.
There's no money. For them, they knew, fine, yes. And you're wondering, so how are you going to work? How are you clothing us? How are you doing all these things? And then
how is food appearing
on the table? And there's no money. It's because for them, they had already budgeted. They knew I have this for this, right? So if you're asking for anything extra, there really is no money for that something extra.
So actually, they should have said it is not in the budget.
Exactly.
Instead of saying there is no money.
Yes.
Because money is there for other things.
Yes, just not in the budget.
Just not in the budget.
Yours has not gotten added into the budget. And as soon as it's added, you will get what you require. Yeah. So as they did it, and probably they didn't know the word was budget. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know whether they didn't know the word was budget, but they told us indirectly.
Yeah.
Right. But now that we are now our parents, yeah, you know them, they're older now, but now we are our parents.
Yes.
And we are having children and they are asking us to bring them stuff in the house in the evening. And we are creating we are getting very creative stories, right?
Yeah.
Of telling them exactly the same thing our parents told us, but in different ways, you know.
What is it that you tell at home? What do you tell them when you're asked for things, Mercy?
When my money grows up.
You'll get it.
When my money grows up, we'll get what you need. Right now, my money is still a child. Yeah.
It's quite nice.
Yeah.
I'll borrow that.
Yeah. But you know, at the end of the day, at least that time they were younger, so it made sense. But now with time, we've got into a space where we can talk about budgeting and they can reason with you. So school just opened. So before school opened, they were like, okay, you know, my budget for next term is I need a new fleece jacket, I need a new set, I need a new ruler.
Yeah.
They have understood that they need to say what the needs are for those needs to be accommodated.
Yeah.
So even as us as from the time you start touching money, whatever age that is, whether you're a young child getting some pocket money from your parents or you've gotten into your first years of working, budgeting is very critical, right? Yeah. We talk about institutions and we see institutions budget yearly. Why do they budget? There's a reason why they budget, right? And of course, these past few years, people have been saying we need to treat our lives as if you're a business. So if you're going to treat your life as if you're a business, then that means you have to operate like one. You need to have a budget, a budget that you stick to, a budget that you track, a budget that you ensure you are following to the T. So what is a budget? A budget is essentially telling your money where to go.
Giving it direction.
And
a purpose.
And at the end of the day, there's the impact that where that money has gone, you will see.
What it has accomplished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I was to talk about just the general needs of a person, you probably have your basic needs. You have shelter, which is your home. You have food, which is your shopping, whatever it is that you shop, groceries that you need in your house. You have clothing, of course, so which is how you dress yourself, whether you need to add something extra or not. Yeah, that's one. And of course, you have your utilities, because nowadays Wi-Fi, airtime is a basic need.
Yes,
we can't
like
do
water.
We can't do without it, right? So you put it among the utilities. You have to pay your electricity, your water bills, your Wi-Fi, your airtime.
Yeah.
You have to budget for it, right? We've seen, of course, situations of people saying, I can't join the postpaid because the postpaid has the initial fee of maybe 3,000, 5,000. But if you sit down with this person and ask them, so how much money do you spend on airtime on a daily or a weekly? They'll tell you, I don't know. I just put in 50 bob or 100 shillings, right?
Yeah.
But again, haba na haba hujaza kibaba. So one thing about budgeting is being able to track.
Yeah.
We will use the analogy of a business as we proceed with budgeting.
Yeah.
Because when you look at a business, we have the finance team. Before they release any money, it has to be budgeted for.
Yes.
The first question is, was it in the budget? Is it necessary? Can we do without it?
Yeah.
Or what's the alternative? So when we're doing our budgets, we also need to do the same. We need to know these are the things that I cannot not pay for.
Yeah.
The basic things that we spoke at the beginning. Then from there, we have the incidentals that come every so often.
Yeah.
Like school fees doesn't come every month. It will come 3 months in a year. But I need to plan for it before the 3 months get here, right? So January, May, and September, I need to have planned for that.
Because you anticipate for it.
You anticipate for it, right? If you're paying insurance on either your home, your car, or your medical bills, you'll find that most of these are paid maybe one-off at the beginning of the year. So you have a whole 11 months to plan for it. Yeah. So when you're doing your budget, you will have your annual budget, but you'll have the items that are monthly.
Yes.
You'll have the items that are quarterly.
Yes.
You'll have the items that are annual.
Yeah.
Right? So when you have that visual, you know that on this month, I am higher on my requirements than on another month. So on the months that you are not as high, what are you doing with the surplus? You have to direct that money.
Yeah.
Because if you don't direct it, it will find places to go.
Yeah, true.
And that is exactly what a budget is all about. Yeah.
Nice. You've brought into perspective the issue of surplus. And that comes to mind. Oftentimes people get into debt. Sometimes it's because of emergencies, things that you had not planned for. And when you're having surplus, and I want to bring the conversation of an emergency fund. For one, I think it's one of the ways to get out of debt, into future debts, that is. Then as well, it's also to shield you. What's the optimum level of this? And what do you have to say about emergency funds?
So
and where can one save?
Where can you even begin? Yeah?
Yes.
So an emergency fund is basically a fund that you can dip into when you are probably low on your income, right? It doesn't mean that because today gas is over, that I jump into my emergency fund to purchase gas, because gas should have been in my budget. If I am tracking my expenses, I should know how often I buy gas. Is it monthly? Is it every 2 months? So that surprise element will not be there because it's on the budget. An emergency fund is a fund that you will utilize in the event your income is not coming in at all. Okay? So you've gotten to a space, say for example, you've resigned, or you've been retrenched, you've been fired, the office has closed shop.
Yes.
Unfortunate events.
Things are common nowadays.
Yeah, unfortunate events like COVID, high economic times, or a takeover. All these things, they could impact your income, right? And it doesn't have to be your income because it's a salary. It could even be your business, right? So the fires in the like say for example toy that we saw in the market in the market, that has impacted people's income, right? So when you talk about an emergency fund, is that once you are done budgeting, you're in a position to say that on a monthly basis I spend X amount of money. Okay. So for example, let's say that our total expenses is say 30,000. Okay. So when I look at where I stay, when I look at the food I buy, and this 30,000 could be different for every person. Okay. I am using 30,000 because maybe I'm thinking I'm a bachelor and I'm living not on the higher end of life. Right. So it's sustaining me. But there's someone else whose monthly expense is 50, 100, 200, depending. Right. So take your monthly expenses, multiply that by 6 months. So if we have 30K as our monthly expense, multiply that by 6 months, that should be about 180K. Right? So basically, in your emergency fund, you should be having a minimum of 180,000. Okay? So that this 180,000, should you not have the money that gives you this 30K, you can dip into it and you can survive for
You've
6
got at
months.
least a cover for
remember
6 months, something
yes,
to take
remember the
care of.
psychological issue we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's not on debt only, because if you didn't have this emergency fund, you're not even looking to repay any debt, but you're looking to survive.
Yes.
So if you didn't have money, the psychological torture, the
coming
mental
up, yeah,
health,
yeah.
gets impacted at that point.
Yeah.
So at least when you have this safety net, it gives you an opportunity to have a buffer,
Yeah.
and you have some time. So, you have 6 months to recover your life, to move back into a space
into shape.
Yeah, to get back into a space where, was it my business? Can I relocate it? Can I do something different? Can I get it back on the ground? If it's employment and you have a skill you are doing, can I do a side hustle? Can I do a consultancy and get some money?
Yeah.
Because you're now free of your basic needs, you can now think of how to generate more. Yeah, that is why the 6-month base is very, very necessary.
That's quite nice. And I just want to also add, many times when we talk about the emergency fund, we also look at it in terms of our targeted savings and all that. And I'm always of the opinion that one should separate this. You should have your goal fund. Maybe if you're saving towards a holiday, or maybe you want to upgrade to a new phone, you want to upgrade into a new electronic and all that. Have your goal fund separately, such that when you reach the goal, access the money and go on. Emergency fund should be for emergencies purely. It's good not to mix the two objectives. Yeah. And where can one do the savings for this? Where would you probably give an option?
On where to save?
Yeah.
You remember your budget. You've talked about something that is very, very important. Every activity that you do has a cost to it. Every activity, right? Remember we spoke about our children going to school for 3 terms.
Yes.
Meaning we have a school fee for January, for May, and for September.
Yeah.
Right? So I need to have an account where I am just basically putting money aside that is purely for school fees. So that even if I have any other emergency, I am not going to touch into the school fee fund, because it has a purpose.
Yeah.
Remember, the reason for budgeting is to give everything a purpose.
Yes.
So if your purpose is to go on a holiday, you need to have an account that you're purely putting money aside for a holiday.
The holiday, yes.
So you're not going to dip into school fee account to go on holiday. Most of the times, what we find ourselves doing is having one account that has all of your money. Right? So if all of your eggs are in one basket, it's very easy to overeat your eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You can eat more eggs than you
The
had
eggs that you
intended
had planned
to.
for
School fees, for holiday, for what? Sometimes
Yeah.
the holiday becomes so nice, you overeat, right? So to avoid the overeating, it's important to do the splitting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there are very many spaces where people can invest money in different ways. And I know money markets have become very popular in our country, right? And they are very easy to get into. There are the ones where you need maybe 1,000 shillings, 2,000 shillings to get into, and you can consequently just add money as you progress. Yeah. So you can decide to have a couple, diversify your portfolio. So one is purely for emergency. Once this one hits this goal, I am good to go, right? Then you have the others. Of course, as you're talking about putting money and purposing your money, the most important one to accomplish is to get to your emergency fund. Once using the example of the 30K, that you have put in close to the 180, your heart feels very comfortable with what you're doing. So that now you can be able to open these others. Remember, this money, as you put it in this money market funds, it doesn't lie idle. It gets invested, right? So even if you were to get to 160 and you're getting a return of 10,000, in 2 years, the 180 would have gotten there, right? Or even in 1 year. Right? But as you put in your 2,000, 1,000, you get your discretionary income, you have a consultancy somewhere that gives you some money, put that money there, right? So the budget, remember the budget, you focus your monies. From there, now have others. One for your school fees specifically, put some money in there for school fees. If you want to holiday, put some money separately for your holidays. Remember your budget, we said there are those items that will be monthly, there are those items that will be quarterly and annually. And remember, when you talk about budget, we're not talking just about the spending of it. The budget is usually both sides. Your budget is the income and the expense. So you also need to account for your income at the top there. What am I earning in January to then have my expense at the end? What am I earning in February to then have my expense at the end? Most of the times we account for our budgets in terms of expenses and not account for the income. Yes.
True. Mercy, when you speak of that, you remind me of myself because I do it very rudimentary. I just have my pen and paper, I'll write it down. And many times when I'm writing down, I'm only writing about my expenses. What are some of the things you recommend in terms of coming up with all this so that we don't get to such a level? For one, of course, there's the financial knowledge. It's important for you to get to know how to go about it. But I want to believe there are simpler ways apart from my style of doing it with a pen of paper. And I want to believe it's not wrong.
It isn't wrong, by the way. In fact, there's a study. Sorry to go scientific, but there's a study that talks about writing things down. They were talking about a study they had done of all of us using our phones a lot to the extent that we have forgotten how to write things down, right? So they say on the phone, your psyche does not grasp things by typing on phone because of the backlight as it used to
when you
by writing things
Wow,
down.
are you saying I'm better?
You're not better, but you're good.
My method is...
Your method is
better.
good.
Okay,
Yes,
good.
it's not rudimentary because you see, the moment you write things, you have engaged your entire core. So your psyche, your body, your nerves, the moving of your hand understands what it is that you're writing. Hence why you're encouraged to not just write one side of your budget, to write the two sides. Because once you write the income at the top and any other anticipated income versus the budget, you can see how the top is reducing. Most of the times we only write the bottom. And then we start asking ourselves, where will this money come from?
I know. That's the same thing I keep asking myself.
Exactly. But if you write your income at the top there and you start writing your expenses, you start realizing, baby, I don't need this. So you decide, you find yourself moving this item to another time or even eliminating it completely.
Yes.
Because you want to match your income to your expenses. Okay.
And have a little to save.
And have some, remember when you're budgeting, your expenses, your savings is part of it. So even if you're distributing everything from your income, savings is part of the list.
Part of it. It's not the balance of it.
No, it's not the balance of it. It's actually the first of it. It's the first of
That's
it.
That's actually worth remembering at all time.
It's the first of it. So you have your income at the top there. The next section there is what are you saving, right? So if you're saving for school fees, remember the small baskets we have separately.
Yes.
We have your emergency fund. You want something to go in. Remember, you can't focus everything on emergency fund because life still has to go on.
Yes, true.
But you have a goal on how you're going to achieve the 6 months over time, right? So you have your emergency fund. You have your school fees. What else are we saving for? A holiday, a nice shoe.
We're also planning for our insurance covers here and there.
Insurance covers because they come at the end of the year, right? Car maintenance, those ones always find us by surprises. We say we are going to the mechanic to change a wheel.
Then you find that you have to not just the gear.
So all those things form the second part. After your income is top, number one. Your second part is your savings. Right? And most of the times we don't count them as savings because eventually they will be spent. But what you're doing is that you're spreading this cost over time. So it's not heavy on 1 month. So if your car service for 5,000 kilometers or 10,000 kilometers, depending on your car, happens every 3 months, every 4 months, every 5 months, remember in your budget for expenses, you'll have car repairs or car maintenance in that 5th, 3rd, 4th year, that month. So at the top here, you then know that in that account, you have enough money to go for that maintenance. Okay. So you don't feel the pressure. So now the another one, the third part now is now your expenses. How are you expensing this money? The money that you've gotten as income and the money that you've put aside for the various activities. Then at the bottom, now you're able to see, have I gone over and above? Because granted, at any one time, there's always something that comes up that was probably not in your budget. Okay. So for example, on your second line, I've started adding miscellaneous. This is how you know we've grown up. Because before we thought miscellaneous was for our parents. Because we never used to be called for help me with this church harambe, help me with my child
welfare,
a welfare thing. We never used to have those, but now we are having them, right? So on topic number 2, income, then your savings, you need to have miscellaneous, because now if you're called for a harambe and you have to give and you want to give, or you want to give back to the community in one way or another, that's the account that you go to. You know, so at the end of it all, you're able to see, has my money been spread out well, or are there places I need to adjust?
That's quite a lot. I just want you, is there a way you can marry these two for me? Tell me what's the relationship between debt management and budgeting, so that at least I can just see it now in the whole spectrum of it.
In the whole spectrum.
And I want to believe these two are actually core in your financial wellness. And for you to be at such a point, these two aspects, debt management and budgeting.
Exactly.
What's the relationship?
Now, remember, when you get a debt, what has it done to you? It's become what? Income, right? Because it's money into your pocket.
Yes.
So it's into. So it's an income, right? So say we're in the month of September. If I apply for a loan and I get it in the month of October, then in my month of October, remember the budgeting aspect. At the top there, I need to have the column for income. So I'll have my income because we're in Zamara, we're employed, we have a salary. So I'll have line number 1, salary, right? Should I have side hustles? My line number 2 should be side hustles. My line number 3 should be debt. And where has this debt come from, right? So, and I will not have the amount of money in terms of the global figure. Remember, the bank gives you, say, for example, you've taken a loan of 500, but they won't give you 500, right? Because there'll be some insurance, transaction, all those things. So
processing fee.
Yes, all those things. But your overall loan total is
the 500,000.
500, So, but on your income, you will put the actual amount that has checked in. So if 480 checked in, your 480 is what you put in there. Okay. Then we've said now step number 2 is where you're putting where money is going. Okay.
Yes.
So this loan, we took it because
not consuming. Remember, you told me not consuming. We probably want to do an investment that will give us more returns.
An investment that will give us more
for
returns,
a longer period than we're repaying the debt.
Okay. So if it's a good debt, then that means you have put in a space where it is repaying itself, right? So in your second aspect, you would have the reason that you got this debt for. So for example, you were investing in a business, if we may call it that way, right? It will be an income on your business. But remember, at the end of the day, this money still has to be repaid, assuming that this business is a sole proprietorship, which you and the business are one, right? So it has to be accounted for there. When you now go into the expenses, you also need to break down how are you spending this debt by itself. So if it's gone into the business, it could easily go into the business and pay the workers instead of going into the business to purchase the stock, to expand and to be better, right? And even as you're doing this to be better, you had a plan at the beginning that when I put in this stock, the potential of my business increasing would be to the tune of 3%, 4%, 10%, 15%, 20%, right? Whatever percentage that is. Now, this needs to be tracked going forward. So in the month of November, remember, you got the money going into the business as 480. We now need to start tracking. How is this 480 paying you back? Right? Because now that becomes an income to you. How is this business paying you back? So that's the good debt because it's paying you back. And you have to track that out of this 480, I was able to do X, Y, Z, and the months into the future after that loan, this is how things have progressed. Now, let's assume we took the 500 for consumer problems. We would have the 500 in our 480 as our income. But when we come now to the third part, we have our repayments. They still line number 1 up there. How much are we repaying on our loan? So if it's a business loan, remember your business is repaying. So the income from the business becomes the out. Right? So if I'm getting 20,000 in from the business and my loan is being repaid at 15, you have a surplus of 5. Okay. But if I had taken this loan with no way of this loan making money for itself, means I have to dig deeper. Means I don't have an income, but I have a higher expense. Remember when we were budgeting, we saw whether we have a surplus or a deficit. So by the time we were taking this loan, we need to see that our surplus could cover the loan that we took for our consumer manenos. So that is how it ties up. Most of the time we get the loan, but we don't put it back in our budget. We don't account and see how are we tracking it. And then remember, this loan of yours, you only have it as the amount of money that came in, but every month there's interest. So you need to track the interest of this
Yeah,
loan.
yeah.
How much interest are you repaying? You already have the formula. You already have the amortization schedule. You can easily put that figure in your, if you're using an Excel template, by all means. If you're using paper, I don't know how you do your paper, but I also use pen and paper. My pen and paper has columns. So January, February, March, April. So if I know I'm taking a loan in November, I will see how the interest is growing month on month as I repay off my
Confidence.
principal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is something that is inculcated as you're doing your day to day. It is tough. I can admit that you will try the first time. The intentionality of wanting to go until the end, weighs you down, but you have to keep trying and trying and trying until it becomes part and parcel of things that you're doing.
Actually, what I'm hearing you say is that it's actually like there's a way it is circular in that it comes before the budget and it also comes after the budget.
Yes.
It comes before the budget such that when you're doing your budgeting, you get to see you're probably intended to expand, even before consumer reason. Yeah, you want to probably, you just don't have means at that point.
Yeah.
So when you see in your budget you have a deficit, you go like, I will probably need debt to be able to take me from one point to another. And as you access that now in your next phase of budgeting, you need to see how are you repaying off this debt? How are you coming out of it? So it is one thing, budgeting will help you to determine whether you really need a debt
Or not.
Then as well, the budgeting will also help you to reduce your debt management.
Exactly.
They kind of go hand in hand somehow.
Yeah. You remember we said we have to list it.
Yes.
Because it's your budget, you're listing. Remember I said it's a debt, but where has it come from? Which institution?
Yes.
At what rate? All those things, you're able to put them down in that one pager.
Yeah, true. Great. That's nice, Mercy. Parting shots. What advice would you give the different listeners that are listening to us? I know we have different ages listening to us. We have the older generation, we have the younger generation. And I know for them, in terms of debt management and budgeting, they look at it differently. What's your word for them?
I think step one, regardless of where you're at, whether you're starting out or whether this is something you're learning later on in life, right?
Yeah.
Step one is tracking your spending.
Yeah.
Most of the time, our income kind of makes sense, right? But our expenses never make sense.
No, actually, I think our income becomes when we get comfortable at it and we adjust to that, such that now our expenses grow to our income levels.
Why?
There we are.
Why? Because we were not tracking. We were not tracking our expenses, because when we start tracking, we are able to see as our expenses adjust to our income.
Yes.
Yeah. Because most of the times the adjusting happens in such a subtle way. Yeah. Today I eat maybe mandazi from the shop for tea, but when my salary does a bit of an increase, I tell myself, maybe now I'm worth cake, right? So I move from the 30 bob or 50 bob I was taking, and I move to maybe 100 shillings, right? So that's a jump of 60 shillings. Now multiply that by 30 days. Of course, that's a lot, right?
Yes, true.
But if we are able to track our expenses, we're in a position to say that today is Monday, I have spent 100 shillings, and where has this 100 shillings gone? Today is Tuesday, today is Wednesday, today is Thursday, I have. So when you look at the end of the week, you can comfortably say, maybe I have spent 2,000 shillings. But these 2,000 shillings, I can also say that it has gone to maybe milk and bread. Maybe it has gone to fruits. Maybe it's gone to vegetables. Maybe it's gone to airtime. Maybe it's gone to parking. Maybe it's gone to fuel. I can be able to track. That is step one. Because once you're able to track, you're in a position to catch yourself when you're now doing some things that you're like, I don't want to find myself writing that I spent this amount of money. It's insane. So you'll be able to catch yourself. Yeah. And that way, over time, you will find yourself limiting your own over expense. Yeah. Because most of the times you'll be like, no, I'm craving. You're really not craving. It's just because you have the money in the pocket. You're used to lunch for 100 shillings, then chapati dondo, and then now all of a sudden, because it's payday, we will go and spend 500,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not because you have a craving for the food for 500. It's
Yes.
because you have money in the pocket. And remember, I said, if you don't budget or if you don't track your money, the money will tell you where it wants to go.
Yes,
Hence
yeah.
why your cravings started round about payday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's more coming in.
There's more coming in. Hence,
So-
the adjusting that we're saying it's not a bad adjustment, just that if you're not tracking and if you're not careful, you end up adjusting to the level of needing more
Yeah.
to maintain the
Yes.
adjustments.
So actually, if you're saying, irrespective of our age,
Yes.
let us track our expenses.
Track your
Let us
expenses.
track our expenses. Then I can probably add in when it comes to debt management, if you're young, get to know why you're getting into debt.
Yes.
Is it for the right reason or not? Then the older you are, get a way to just repay off your loans as
Yeah.
fast as you
And-
can.
and
that
stay
you just
debt-free as you get
and be
into
debt-free.
retirement.
And then even irrespective, even the younger you are as well, also pay up your debts.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait and pay at the minimum amount as you go and see
Yeah.
how you can actually increase this or that.
Yeah,
You
and
get to
avoid
enjoy.
penalties.
To avoid penalties as
avoid
well.
penalties, because sometimes you're always like, I have this loan for 3 years. So even if I don't pay 1 month, what is the damage? Yeah,
Yes.
that 1 month
Has an impact.
it has an impact, because then that means the balance has not reduced, means your interest is still high.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the next time you need to pay, you will need to play catch up.
Yes.
Yeah,
True,
in trying
true.
to repay. And then over and above that, some of them have penalties. If you don't pay by a specific time, there's a 5% penalty. So if your interest is at 15 and you have another 5% penalty on not paying that amount of
Yeah.
money, you've really gotten again into the debt trap, because
Yes,
it's gotten
true.
deeper for you
Yeah.
for what you need to get out of your pocket to repay. Yeah. So let's repay. Let's avoid penalties. Let's budget. Let's account for our money. Money is good. We just need to give it direction.
Awesome. Great, Mercy. Thank you so much. Great
Thank you.
insights there. Thank you so much for coming to this show.
Thank you for having me. I've had so much fun.